Hey everybody, I'm Sword Cooper, but you can call me Coop. I wanted to talk to you today about role-playing games. But Coop, why should I listen to your stories and takes on RPGs when there are so many other YouTubers out there already? Well, audience, I'm a longtime dungeon master. I've been running games more or less weekly for about 8 years now, and playing them for about 10. Not only that, but I'm an animator with a degree in interactive media. That's right, this is my degree, and I have to justify all those years of school somehow, damn it. Rather, I've got tons of stories stacked up and the skills to make them at least halfway watchable. I think I've got the perfect story to start with, too. How would you like to hear about the time that I traumatized several of my friends to the point in which one of them woke up in the middle of the night screaming at me about trains? Okay, well, too bad. I'm going to talk about it anyway. Real fast, some background and context. This story comes from a 2-year-long Dark Heresy game that I ran way back in 2013. Dark Heresy is a game set in the Warhammer 40k universe, the setting where the term grimdark comes from. I'm a big fan of 40k, and I like picturing what life must be like for the regular folk who happen to be living in that universe. In Dark Heresy, you take the role of the unlucky few who the Inquisition have deemed useful and have forced into their service, in this case sniffing out and killing the many horrible cultists, aliens, and demons that are hiding out among the general population doing dark deeds. The PCs in this nightmarish romp were Cassius, the foppish scum, scum's a character class by the way, whose character concept was Griffith, but in space. Yarny, an Imperial Guard's weapons specialist with pink hair who was as quiet as they were hard to kill. Solomon, a former guardsman turned merc that was quite upset when the rest of the gang recruited him. Scraperat, a Voidborn smuggler, right, Voidborn are people who were born and raised in space, who was really into Gothic Lolita fashion for some reason. Novus, a ecclesiarchal priest and crusader type, and last, Corpse. I'm calling this one Corpse since all they did was die pretty early on in an obvious trap, and it caused a lot of drama in and out of game that I don't want to get into. These poor fools have been sent as backup security for the initial deployment of several Imperial Titans on Notai. If you don't know what a Titan is, imagine a Gundam, cut off the top, and replace it with a cathedral. Now slap on some guns. More guns. Yeah, that's about right. The planet had been isolated by warp storms for over 1,000 years, but was still operational in building these giant war machines thanks to a population mainly made up of servitors. What's a servitor, you ask? Imagine a regular person, now accuse them of a crime, arrest them, and haphazardly mutilate their body with industrial cybernetics. Keep going until they're a cruel cybernetic piece of industrial machinery that hopefully can no longer feel or think for itself. Yeah, there's no good faction in 40k, by the way. It's all lesser of two evils from the top down. There had been several attacks on servitor depots near the train route that were moving these titans from their storage facilities to a giant space elevator to deploy them. Not only that, but the nobility of the sector had caught wind of this momentous occasion and turned the whole affair from a standard military deployment into a giant self-congratulatory party about how great their home sector was now that they've reclaimed so many lost worlds. The party's job was to pick up the slack for the overextended local militia, investigate these attacks, and act as security on the half-kilometer-long mega train that was going to ship these war machines off to space. The first session, the party split into 2 teams and ran down every lead I'd given them on the planet so far. Team 1, consisting of Solomon, Yarny, and Scraperat, scoured one of the servitor depots that had been attacked before their arrival. Thanks to some good investigation rolls, they discovered a number of ammo casings and even discarded sidearms at the scene of the attack, as well as shattered biohazardous material containers. Solomon and Scraperat accidentally nicked themselves on the glass from the containers while bagging them up and sending them off for analysis. While they were there, they also found that some of the frozen servitors were showing signs of premature decay compared to the depot's records. This had thrown up some red flags for the players who knew more about the setting and had already begun thinking about what possible, unimaginable force of darkness could have been behind these attacks. Still, their investigation done and no other clues to be found, they packed up what they had and decided to trace where the sidearms had come from. Meanwhile, Team 2, consisting of Cassius and Corpse, ran off on a side quest that ultimately amounted to Corpse gunning down an undercover inquisitorial agent before getting executed later that same session. I told you they wouldn't last long. Cutting back to Solomon and the gang, they had tracked the weapons from the depot to a group of smugglers who had been stealing the weapons from nearby factories and selling them to private groups on and off-world. Diplomacy basically broke down immediately when the smuggler's boss demanded cash for any info on the weapons. A few threats here and there, and things broke out into a full-blown gunfight. Rat and Yarny got away more or less unscathed, but Solomon, he chucked a frag grenade into the enemy's ammo dump and blew up the warehouse, while he was still inside of it. He survived, but only by burning a fate point. Okay, last digression, I swear. Fate points are basically a resource that lets you heal or reroll a test in Dark Heresy. You get 2 or 3, and they refresh every session, but you can permanently sacrifice one to survive a deadly situation or avoid getting maimed. Solomon's charred body got rushed off to surgery while the surviving party members regrouped to trade notes and were given a briefing about the status of the train. They had figured out that the attacks were the responsibility of a cult, who seemed to be testing a virus on the planet's servitors. They were told that the train transporting the Titans was going to be loaded up with a number of nobles from all over the sector, and they knew that the cult was interested in stolen weapons. Everyone playing the game was fairly familiar with 40k, so they had a pretty strong feeling that Nurgle, the chaos god of plague and rot, was involved because of all the weird goo and rotting servitors. But they still didn't know what the cult's real target was. By now we were 2 or 3 sessions into the investigation, and the next night Cassius's player Gwen, who unlike me is an actual irresponsible adult with a real sleep schedule, called me at about 1 a.m., yelling, "Coop, you son of a bitch!" before I managed to even say hi. According to Gwen, the Nurgle cult's attack on the Titan shipment was all a distraction, so they could get cultists on board and infect the nobility with this new virus. The nobles, with all of their clout and ability to break the law with money, would then flee the planet, return home, and spread the virus to the entire sector. They were so sure of this that, again, this responsible adult with a job and a real sleep schedule, who wakes up at like 6 a.m. to go jogging and shit, woke up at 1 a.m. to yell this at me because they knew they were right. And, well, they weren't that far off. But I think I'll save what actually happened for later. Join me next time for the session that made my players permanently paranoid about trains.